Have you ever wondered what really happens when someone overstays their visa? I mean, not the simple "you pay a fine" stuff they talk about on the internet, but the real story, the one that starts quietly and ends with your whole life flipped upside down? Picture this. You're sitting at a foreign airport, maybe sipping coffee, scrolling your phone, waiting for your flight home, and then, bam! The immigration officer glances at your passport, types something, looks up with that blank professional stare, and suddenly the air around you turns heavy. You smile, thinking it's routine. It's not. Your stomach twists. He calls someone on the radio, and within minutes, 2 officers approach you. That's the moment your adventure turns into a nightmare. You think, it's just a few extra days. What's the big deal? But here's the truth. Nobody really tells you. Overstaying your visa is not just a rule break. It's a digital fingerprint that follows you across every border, every airline, every online system that checks who you are. The system doesn't forget. The clock that started ticking the moment your visa expired has already built your digital case file, even before you realize it. You might think nobody noticed when you stayed that extra week in Thailand or those 2 months in Europe, but the system knows, and it doesn't sleep. Immigration databases talk to each other. Airlines share data. Even hotel check-ins, flight bookings, and bank transactions sometimes sync with government systems. You might think that's paranoia, but it's not. It's how modern immigration control quietly evolved. No alarms, no sirens, just invisible red flags that get triggered without you hearing a thing. So what really happens next? Let's go deeper. When you overstay your visa, it's not just your name that gets marked, it's your entire travel identity. Think of it like a hidden file that follows your passport number everywhere you go. The first thing that changes is your border trust level. You might not see it, but inside the immigration officer's screen, there's a small note that pops up. It could say, "Previous overstay, 8 days." Just 8 days. Seems harmless, right? But that small red note changes everything. Next time you apply for a visa, whether it's to the US, Canada, Schengen, or anywhere that uses biometric tracking, they'll see that note. And guess what? That single note makes your future travel 10 times harder. You'll need to explain it, prove why it happened, and show evidence that it won't happen again. Some officers are nice, some aren't. And sometimes, even when you do everything right, the system still says no. Now let's say you overstayed for a few weeks. You're thinking, I'll just pay the fine. Sure, in some countries like the Philippines or Indonesia, that's how it works. You pay a fee, smile, and leave. But that's only the visible part of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, your travel profile is marked with a non-compliance code. That code may not hurt you immediately, but try entering a country that shares immigration data with your last destination, and things can get complicated. You could be stopped at customs, questioned, or even denied entry, and you'll have no idea why. You'll blame random screening, but in reality, it's that one moment when you thought an extra few days wouldn't matter. Now let's make it more real. Imagine you're living in Europe on a tourist visa. 90 days fly by fast, right? You stay because you're in love, because your flight got too expensive, or maybe because you got sick. You don't leave. You think, I'll fix it later. But time is ruthless. On day 91, your legal stay ends. On day 92, your name hits a shared database called SIS, Schengen Information System. You're flagged. You might not feel anything different, but the next time you book a flight or cross a border in Europe, you'll notice how the officer suddenly takes longer to scan your passport. That's your silent penalty. You've been marked. Some travelers only realize this when they try to apply for another visa and get that dreadful rejection letter. Applicant has previously overstayed. That line can haunt you for years. But let's talk about the stories that never reach the internet. I met a traveler once, let's call him Ryan. He overstayed his visa in Japan by just 11 days. 11 days, not 11 months. When he tried to leave, immigration officers politely asked him to step aside. They didn't shout, didn't arrest him, just took him to a quiet room. They offered him water, smiled, but the paperwork they filed marked him with a 5-year entry ban. 5 years for 11 days. He couldn't go back to Japan even when his company offered him a job there. Lost opportunity, lost trust, lost time. Another story, an American backpacker in Bali. She fell in love with the island, stayed 3 months over her limit, paid the fine at the airport, and thought that was it. A year later, she tried to apply for a visa to Vietnam. Denied. Turns out, Southeast Asian countries often share certain regional travel watch lists. Her name popped up with a long-term overstay flag. She never even knew it existed. But that's not even the scary part. The real fear begins when overstaying turns into illegal presence. It's a legal term that sounds small but carries huge consequences. For example, in the US, if you overstay for more than 180 days, you trigger an automatic 3-year ban. If you stay more than a year, it becomes a 10-year ban. Yes, 10 years. That means you can't just apply for another visa, you're barred. And here's what makes it worse. Even if you marry a citizen or get a job offer, that overstay record follows you. It's permanent unless you file legal waivers, which are almost impossible to get approved. I once read about a woman who overstayed by 9 months because of a medical issue. She had hospital records, doctor letters, even embassy correspondence. But when she tried to re-enter the country 2 years later, immigration said no. Overstay violation, they told her. No emotion, no flexibility, no mercy. So why does this happen? Why are governments so strict about overstays? It's not just about laws, it's about control. Modern immigration systems work like algorithms. They track behavior patterns. If one person overstays, the system assumes they might overstay again. It's predictive. It's cold. And in the age of AI and data analytics, that prediction can block your travel freedom without any human decision involved. It's not even personal anymore. Your passport number becomes a math equation in a risk database. But let's look at it from the inside. Imagine you're the officer. You see thousands of travelers every week. One of them overstayed once, maybe just a few days. The system warns you. You look up, see their nervous face, their shaky hands, their smile trying to look confident. You already know they're hiding something. You can feel it. That's the psychology of border control, trained to detect micro-reactions, body language, hesitation. The moment you hesitate answering, they know. Even if you're That's how many travelers end up in secondary screening, not because of their past, but because of their reaction to their past. Here's something few people talk about. When you overstay, it doesn't just affect your travel. It affects your insurance, your banking, even your tax records in some cases. If you're in a country on a student or work visa, overstaying can automatically cancel your work permits, your tax ID, or even your eligibility for benefits. Some countries notify your employer, some don't. But if they do, your career might be over before you even leave the country. And the worst part? You might not even know until you try to reapply later and realize your record is blacklisted. Now, some travelers think they can reset their visa by leaving and coming back after a few days. That trick used to work decades ago. Not anymore. Immigration systems now use integrated movement records. They know when you left, when you came back, and whether you're gaming the system. There are travelers who tried doing visa runs in Thailand, hopping to Malaysia for a few days, then coming back. It worked the first time. The second time, immigration pulled them aside, questioned their intent, and denied entry for abusing the system. That's the silent evolution of modern borders. They adapt faster than travelers realize. And here's where it gets even darker. Some countries have begun experimenting with something called predictive migration analytics. It's basically an AI model that uses your digital footprint, your bookings, social media, even your online spending patterns to predict if you're likely to overstay. Imagine this. You book a one-way ticket, no return, stay in a cheap hostel, and don't have a clear itinerary. That data could flag you before you even board your flight. Some travelers have been denied boarding not because of their passport, but because of how their travel behavior looked suspicious to an algorithm. Scary, right? But let's pull this closer to real life. Imagine a young woman named Alina, studying abroad in Italy. Her visa expired while she was waiting for her university to renew her student permit. The delay wasn't her fault, but when she went to the immigration office, they told her she had already overstayed by 12 days. Those 12 days triggered an entry ban that made her lose her scholarship. She returned home in tears, confused how something so small could destroy years of effort. She didn't commit a crime. She didn't steal. She just overstayed. But in the language of immigration, that's enough. So, what can you do if you've already overstayed? Most people panic, search online, and find confusing advice. Here's what actually works. Honesty. Always declare it. Always explain it before they find it themselves. Write a clear explanation letter with proof of why it happened. Medical issues, flight cancellations, emergencies. Sometimes embassies do show understanding. But here's the twist. It's not the embassy that decides your fate. It's the Central Immigration Database. Even if your officer wants to help, they're bound by what the system allows. So yes, you might meet kind people, but their hands are tied by code and policy. Still, some people get lucky. Others don't. I once heard of a man who overstayed in Dubai by 2 days because his flight got canceled due to a sandstorm. He explained, showed documents, and they let him go. But another guy, same situation, same airport, was fined heavily and banned for 6 months. Why the difference? It comes down to how the system classified them. Low risk versus repeat offender. So no, there's no universal rule. There's only one truth. Once you overstay, you lose control of your narrative. The system tells your story for you. And yet, despite all of this, thousands of travelers still do it every year. Sometimes out of ignorance, sometimes out of love, sometimes out of bad luck. The internet makes it sound harmless, like just pay the fine. But behind those smiling travel vloggers who say they accidentally overstayed, there are hundreds who can't tell their story because they're banned, stuck, or blacklisted. Nobody makes viral videos about that part. Nobody shows you the face of the traveler crying at the airport counter, realizing they can't go home. So, what's the takeaway? If you're traveling, treat your visa like oxygen. Once it expires, every breath after that comes with a cost. Set reminders. Double-check your dates. Don't trust rumors. And if you ever feel tempted to stay just a little longer, remember this story. Because that extra day might not just change your trip, it could change your entire future. But here's the question that keeps me up at night. What if one day, AI immigration systems start making decisions before you even pack your bags? What if the future of travel isn't about passports or stamps, but about trust scores, digital ones, that predict your behavior before you cross the border? Maybe that's already happening. Maybe right now, somewhere in a silent government server, your name sits in a file labeled potential risk, and you'll never even know it. Until the day the officer looks up from his screen, stares into your eyes, and says those 5 words every traveler dreads, "Please come with me, sir."